אומנות, יצירה, בובות, לייב, אנחנו כבר בתוכנית 12, תוכנית מספר 12, הקורונה עוד כאן, הסגר עוד כאן, קצת יותר מרווח, אבל עדיין סגר, מרכז תיאטרון בובות עדיין שומעים, אני עדיין פה לבד עם כל הבובות שפה מסביב, אבל היום יש לנו תוכנית מאוד מאוד מיוחדת שתעסוק בשילובים, שילובים של אומנויות, שילובים של אומנויות וטכנולוגיה, שילובים של טכניקות שונות של בובות, ואנחנו נעשה את זה עם שני אורחים מאוד מיוחדים מסקוטלנד, ומי הם האורחים? ואלה האורחים שיהיו איתנו הערב. סיימון מקנטייר. סיימון הוא המנהל האומנותי של ויז'ן מקניקס. לסיימון יש הכשרה בהנדסה אזרחית והכשרה בבובנאות, אותה רכש בתיאטרון ליטל אנג'ל, המלאך הקטן, בלונדון. מזה למעלה מ-30 שנים שהוא מביים, מפיק ומופיע כבובנאי. ויחד איתו תהיה גם קים ברגסגל, המנהלת הקריאיטיבית של הקבוצה. שחקנית, מעצבת ויוצרת שהוכשרה במכללה לאומנות ועיצוב בסנטרל סנט מרטין ובתיאטרון ליטל אנג'ל, שוב המלאך הקטן שבלונדון, עיצבה בובות עבור תיאטרון, קולנוע וטלוויזיה בכל רחבי העולם. קבוצת התיאטרון שלהם היא ויז'ן מקניקס, קבוצה מאדינבורו, סקוטלנד, שהוקמה בתחילה תחת השם The Puppet Lab, וב-2011 מודגם מחדש בשמה הנוכחי. הקבוצה מובילה תהליכים של שיתופי פעולה בין קהילות, ביצירת פרויקטים מקוריים ואיכותיים של אומנויות. האירועים נערכים בכל רחבי סקוטלנד וגם מחוצה לה, גם במקומות קונבנציונליים וגם כמופעים תלויי מקום, או כמו שאומרים ביידיש, סייט ספציפיק, עם דגש רב על שילובים של תחומי אומנות מגוונים וגם על שילובים של טכנולוגיה. אז אלה האורחים שלנו, סיימון וקים, נעלה אותם לשידור, נגיד שלום לסיימון. Hello Simon.
Hey, hi there.
Hello, and hello Kim.
Hello, nice to see you.
So we have a long show, I think, if I want to speak about all the materials you send me, which is so diverse. But let's start from the very beginning. The question that always interests me: how does one become a puppeteer, and why?
You want to go first, Ken?
Yeah, sure. I always loved puppets, and I've got an older brother, and he and I used to have like a money duck we put our money into, our pennies into, and we would go along once we'd collected enough money to Hamley's, a big shop in London, and buy string puppets. They were Pelham puppets, and they were quite popular amongst kids in those days. And so I just always loved it, but I never thought of it as a career, and trained as a dancer, and then I went to art college, and I was looking for something, and I came across Little Angel Theatre, and I started there under John Wright, who sadly now is dead, and it was a great environment, great training, like an apprenticeship. That's my story.
Yeah, and you, Simon?
So I never realized that you could actually become a puppeteer. So when I finished doing civil engineering at Glasgow University, I went back to Nairn in the north of Scotland, and my father said, well, what are you going to do? And I said, I don't know. So he said, well, go down to London. Everybody should go to London. So I went off down to London, and he said, I know this chap who runs a puppet company there. Maybe you could go work for him for a bit. And I said, okay. So I tried that out. And then I suddenly realized, wow, I really enjoy this. And then I looked back, and of course, my parents had always done puppet shows. I never really thought of it before until I'd actually started. But yeah, it just sort of hooked me in. I loved it. It's a kind of total world.
So what were the studying at the Little Angel like back then?
It was a real apprenticeship. So I started on the lighting, and then in moving the props. So John Wright made beautiful marionettes, and his wife Lindy was a lot younger, she introduced different sorts of puppets. And it was much easier to get a leading role in anything other than the marionettes. So, of course, the one thing I wanted was a leading role working the marionettes, which are long string marionettes. And he just used to say, John used to say, practice the puppet, walk it up and down the stage, just walk it up and down the stage. And I hung around. It took me 4 years to get the leading role. But I did, and it was a family environment. They had 2 kids, Sarah Wright, who now runs the Curious School of Puppetry, which is fantastic, and Joe Wright, who's a film director, and Lindy's still around. So it's still a hub, and at that time, it was the place to learn. I didn't know that at the time, but it was.
So it was like learning through practicing, or was it curriculum?
An apprenticeship. There was no fixed course at all. Basically, if John liked you, he gave you work, and you picked it up as you went along, really. And watched. I mean, amazing. The best puppeteers were there, and you just watched them and absorbed it. And you know, if you were lucky, you got on.
Yeah.
Simon, what was your experience?
So, well, I arrived, and this amazing looking woman called Kim Bergsagle, who's she was like the top puppeteer, and John, I swept the stage first of all and did the lighting. And in those days, they were the lighting dimmers, the big old massive ones, handheld. And for some reason, there must have been some sort of short circuit on them, because whoever got to operate them always got an electric shock. So that was and then John Wright would give you obviously as a marionette maker, he made some amazing puppets full of beautifully balanced, and then he made some terrible puppets. And those are the ones that normally the beginning puppeteers got to work. So not only did you start off working these terrible puppets, but you looked terrible doing it. But I aspired to be where Kim Bergsagle was, this incredible puppeteer. And one day I remember we did a turn together, didn't we, first, Kim? Is that right? Yeah, I think so, yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, I think we did Bunraku, Amal and the Night Visitor Mother.
Oh, yeah, that's right, yeah.
Together. You were on my hands.
Yeah,
and this is where you coupled?
Yeah, we met there. Yeah.
Yeah, we met there. It was instant attraction.
And John was very sweet. he totally liked the both of us. And yeah, we went on tour with him to Czechoslovakia and Germany and over to Poland. Actually, we went to Poland to one of the very first. Yeah, that's us on tour, going through, driving through Czechoslovakia. There's Lindy and John, and heading out towards Bielsko-Biala for an international festival. That was the first time we'd seen European puppeteers working, and that was quite. And then suddenly I kind of thought, wow, this is really a serious profession. People really take it seriously, and I loved it. It was great, actually. Great.
It was in the summers. He used to pack up the vans and used to go on tour to Europe, and it was like a traveling circus. You camped on the way. The pay was always terrible. And we're talking 1978, 79, end of the 70s. Yeah.
So Dudi Ben Aderet is a puppeteer or film puppeteer. He's writing that he has great memories from the theater, from the Little Angel, from the show, and from the visit from the studio of the theater. And until today, as he holds John's book, he's so excited. Thank you, Dudi.
Oh, great!
So I have the reason I ask about the Little Angel, because I have my own memories. I was there, I think, it's 87, and I went to see a show, and then I introduced myself. I'm a puppeteer from Israel, and apparently they have like tradition of hosting puppeteers. So I was invited to stay for the next show, which was the same show, but to see it from behind the scenes. And I met John. He was already old, and he was like his body was deformed, something like this.
He'd had a stroke.
No, and then maybe, but then when I went up with him on the rigs and I saw him manipulating the marionettes. So his body just got the shape of a marionnettist who does it a lot of years. But I was thinking about The Apprentice because there was a young puppeteer there. It was the Little Mermaid, and this was the witch, and she had a ball, and there was smoke coming out of the ball. It was 87. I don't think that there was a smoke machine back then.
Cigarette.
So she was holding a cigarette, waiting for a cue, but she was waiting for the cue with she already inhaled the smoke.
Yeah.
And she was just standing.
Yeah.
waiting. And I asked her why, and she said something about being a professional and the honor she gave this profession. And then I thought that something good is happening in the little angel, not because of the master is terrorizing his subjects, because he's really a real educator.
Yeah. I did that. I did the cigarette thing, and I don't smoke.
He was inspiring. I think that's the word. And I suppose since then we've worked in India, and a lot of people have gurus and masters. And I think that you could say John Wright was a kind of guru of puppetry. After work, he would tell us stories about, he came from South Africa originally, and he would tell us stories about being in South Africa and about the work he did there, and then coming over to the UK and working in Hampstead and being in London. And when he started, he didn't have Little Angel then, these stories were like being imbued us with the desire to have that kind of life and that kind of joy. And those trips when we went on tour, we all sat around and we moaned. We were just working there. But on the other hand, we shared food together, and we traveled together, and we were a company. And being when they say a theatre company, it's not a disparate group of people doing lots of different things. A theatre company is those people bonded together to produce a piece of work. And when we try and make work, we often try and think about those days working with John Wright and how we were part of his theatre company, and we worked together as that company with this idea of creating this project. It was good.
So, and at what stage you decided to form your own company?
Well, we went from John Wright to Wales to a company that was very well funded called the Caricature Theatre Company. It was a children's theatre company. And we were there for 2.5 years, and then we decided to come up to Scotland. And at that point, we had to stand on our own 2 feet and start with little booth puppet shows. And then we got our first grant in 85 and made a show called Tam O'Shanter by Robert Burns, a poem by Robert Burns. And that was incredibly successful. We did it as a black theatre show, and it had 40 puppets in it. And I think it was a 40-minute show. So I used to say it's a puppet a minute. And they were all different sizes, and we had 5 people in the company. So it was traditional corridor of light. But
I think one of the things was that when we left John Wright at Little Angel, we were absolute puppeteer purists. There was nothing as good as a marionette show, and we stuck our noses in the air when we arrived at Caricature, and we're working all these different kinds of puppets. But actually what that did was give us a huge amount of freedom, and realized, we still love marionettes and we still love puppets, but we realized that you could mix media a lot more. And we met John Blundell there and Jane Phillips, and there were people doing different things with puppetry with a much more European influence. John had his style, and that's what he was a guru of that style. But it was at the Caricature Theatre that we started to mix media and experiment, and Tam O'Shanter was using dance and Scottish traditional music and telling a traditional story, but in this corridor of light style. We still hadn't reached the point where the puppeteers were visible on stage yet, had we, Kim?
No.
Back then.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see some pictures because the puppeteers are visible, or were they just posing for the camera?
Later.
No, I saw some videos.
Later, but not by the time when we did Tam O'Shanter in 85, we hadn't performed ourselves, so you could see the puppeteers.
Yeah.
We were still in black.
Yeah, okay. I tried to translate most of the name of the shows, so I was looking for Thomas Shante. I read about it. It's אבותיה דיון, זה מדובר בבלדה סקוטית שמספרת על עיקר שיוצא עם הסוס ומסתבך עם כל מיני יצורים בדרך. So I'll just explain about the name and about the poem. So doing some research, I learned a lot during these past 2 days. So when did you practically form the Puppet Lab?
Well, we left caricature and we came to Scotland initially to work for another puppeteer on a production of A Mile and Night Visitors, because we'd done that in London. But then that was over in Glasgow, and then we decided to move to Edinburgh, and we were thinking of a name. So we first of all actually called ourselves the Edinburgh Puppet Company. But we kept on hitting. It's a funny thing. We started off with puppetry with John Wright, but we had this. I think things were freer then. Puppetry was seen as less of a children's entertainment, and we never thought of ourselves as making shows for children. We thought ourselves as puppeteers making theatre that we wanted to create. We never put ourselves in a box, but gradually as things, maybe funding tightened up or perceptions changed and children's theatre became more important, that box started to appear and puppetry became a children's entertainment. So first of all, we started off with very much these puppet shows, but gradually we tried to become the Puppet Lab because we thought, well, that would allow us to experiment more. We hated being stuck in a box, being told that we had to make a particular show for a particular audience. We wanted our shows to be generally for all family, all people, not adult puppet shows, because that has a context, but shows that everybody could enjoy from young to old, which is really going back to John Wright's theory of puppetry, that his shows, he never really thought of making children's theatre. He made puppetry for everybody. So that's kind of what we tried to do.
So when we came up to Scotland, it was 1983. So that was when we, I suppose, started, and then changed from there, from Edinburgh Puppet Company, eventually to the Puppet Lab. Because, and then we changed to Vision Mechanics because we were doing shows that actually didn't necessarily have puppets in them. So we needed to have more range in our name. We also, I would say the other influential thing that we did was in 1990, I think it was, we did a masterclass with Peter Schumann from Bread and Puppets. And that was very influential in our work getting bigger. And we started to do summer pageants with giant puppets made out of willow, and gathering a whole load of people. We'd go off in the summer, a bit like John Wright did, go off with a group of people in the summer and our kids, and create big puppets and put on a show like a traveling circus. We did that every year for years.
Yeah. And that was, I remember after we'd just done the Peter Schumann course when we first did one, and we went up to stay on the Black Isle, which is in the north of Scotland. And there's a fantastic story there called the Brahm Seer, a prophet who was predicting the future and made the terrible mistake of predicting the future to the wife of the laird, who said, "Where's my husband?" And he said, "In bed with another woman." And immediately that he was then burned for being a prophet. So big mistake. But when we made that show, we used those bread and puppet techniques. We used local paper and clay and wood, and we made these incredible puppets. But they were so heavy, it took about 10 people to carry one puppet. So then we started looking at other puppeteers who were making big stuff, and so there was Bread and Puppets, Peter Schumann, but there was also the Welfare State in the UK with John Fox, and they were making puppets using a lot of willow. So we started to look at that material and willow and latex and fabric and create very big things, but much lighter that people could carry. And they were kind of promenade shows and events, usually based around a theme. So there'd be a festival of the sea, or Saints and Mysteries with another one. And so that's the kind of thing we would tour.
when you say willow, willow, I just translate, it's ערבה בעברית, willow זה עץ ערבה. So you're using the branches or the leaves?
The branches.
Branches, yeah. It's what storm is made out of.
Yeah, we'll get to storm. There is a phone to storm. I was just telling previously to Simon that yesterday we translated the BBC report that I'm going to show later, and you are saying that you designed her and willowed her.
Yes.
So it's very hard to say it in Hebrew. Willowed her. So it's a motif that we can see it in the picture that we will see later. So let's just make a brief stop and see some giant puppets of yours, not Big Man and not Storm, that we'll keep her for later. We'll just see these, a short peep.
Okay, keep coming and duck. Keep coming, duck. That's it. You're through. And keep coming. And Alice.
Duck down. Stop. Duck down. That's it. Oh, it's a tricky bit.
Yeah, get a band down.
Yeah, just a little. Yeah, sorry.
I was just going to say they're every year, not this year, but there's Edinburgh has a big Christmas Hogmanay festival, and this was for Hogmanay. There were 3 grannies who would walk around in the crowd. I mean, people come from all over the world usually for this festival.
Yeah.
While you were talking about the early time, the picture were running. Did you design all the puppets for the Puppet Lab?
Yeah.
It's always you. I mean, you don't work with say exterior designers.
I think I'm right in saying it's all me, isn't it, Sai?
Yeah. We're in the same house but in different rooms. Yeah. So what we normally do is, I mean, that's a lot of work for Kim to do. So for instance, this picture you're showing, Kim designed all the animals and carved the heads. That's Mr. and Mrs. Noah. And yeah, sometimes people come and help, but Kim oversees them. So they're working to Kim's designs if they're working with her.
Mm.
Yeah, this show was called The Little Circus. And actually, what's nice about that, there's Shona Repe in there, who's a very famous Scottish puppeteer now, tours all over the world.
And also we have someone barging in. It's Ronnie Ledrew. Hello, Ronnie. Thank you for watching.
Oh, Ronnie, how lovely!
Yeah. He was one of those little angel people. We go, oh, I wish I could work a puppet like Ronnie Ledrew.
Yeah, he's a star.
He is, yeah.
He is, and he's with us today. So thank you, Ronnie. He also belongs to my 1987 stories. That visit to London, that I decided to see all possible puppeteers. That was my. So the next one is I'm going to show is very interesting to me. What year did you do it? It's the Beauty and the Beast, combining marionettes with video.
Yeah. So
what year did you produce it?
Kim, when did we produce this? Helped 92, 93?
No, 2004, I think.
Oh, yeah. Phew. Okay. But the reason was because we trained with Little Angel Marionette Theatre, we always wanted to do puppet shows. Actually, we've had a few Beauty and the Beast productions. So the very first one we did, we used a wooden stage, 24-inch marionettes, and we toured that. And that was fairly successful. And then many years later, we decided to tour a puppet show, Thumbelina. We shrunk the puppets down to, I think, 18, 18 inches. But we had a big marionette stage built for us. Now, that was 5 people to tour that stage, and it nearly killed us. it was so heavy and so big to put up. You know, it would take 6 hours to put up. You do an hour's show, then you take it down and drive to the next venue, and you're like, oh my God, I can't do this anymore. So the problem, but we've been working a lot of television by then, and we realized that perhaps there was a better way of doing marionette shows, which was to create the final picture on a screen. But show people the technique live. So in this, you can see that we are actually doing the show live. This is just a sort of picture during rehearsals. So Beauty and the Beast. So they are. We use blue screen, not green screen. And then we had the sets on another camera, and we just live mixed it and showed it on the screen. And interestingly enough, we just did this in Qatar. We went over to Qatar. They commissioned us to build a show like this for them called Bushra in the Sea.
Just last year.
Yeah. And so technology had changed so incredibly that the cameras could work in low light, and the green screen, we used green screen, was so much better that it was amazing. And suddenly we were liberated with the marionette puppets. We didn't have to tour massive sets anymore. And we're actually, funny enough, right now we're working on another green screen kind of marionette show, which is called
The Fantastic Life of Minnie Rubinsky.
So that's kind of, we were going to do that as a show, but so now we're thinking of an exhibition. And so we're currently building, and we'll be filming later on this month.
So it was quite a novelty, I think.
But then, unbelievable. People were gobsmacked. They kind of didn't know where to look. And we were way ahead there. But it was like watching. So basically we set up a television studio in the theater, and people watched it. It's great, actually, because it's all interesting. And then there's a powerful narrative, which everyone knew, driving the whole thing, Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah, well, there was one picture that's showing the whole stage, like you were working on one side and the screen on the other side that showed the combination. But someone forgot to use it now. It's just another reminder that I'm only human.
Yeah.
I hate it. But one thing I wanted to ask about it was about the design that catch my eye, because it's the Beauty and the Beast, and we're used to the beauty being the Beauty and the Beast, and now the Beast here is so pleasant, and the beauty is bold.
Well, actually, it's just because she's in rehearsal. She did have hair. But I like your interpretation, yeah.
Yeah, because I was thinking, oh, she is brave. I mean, it's showing children, because for children sometimes they need the prototypes, and they're disappointed. I'm not saying that this is what we should give them. But sometimes they are disappointed. So I thought it was brave.
I did play with that idea in a show. I did the female character who was meant to be very beautiful, and I thought that I had made her very unbeautiful. But what I found was that the children all thought she was beautiful anyway, and I wasn't really sure I was getting the message across. So, yeah.
So there's another picture from the Frog Prince.
Frog Princess.
Princess.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there was another one, Princess Pirate. So
yes.
Are we trying to convey a message here?
I think we're trying to attract audiences. The Princess Pirate was about a child going through puberty, and I suppose being female, being a little girl, being classed as a princess, but she was very gutsy, so she was more of a pirate, and her parents were having a baby, and she was feeling threatened. So it was about her journey.
Yeah.
Frog Princess was a traditional story from a book that I was given when I was a little girl, and it's a Russian story. So I just loved the story and the illustrations, and we did it Well, we still do it, actually. It's a classic storytelling show that's very easy for Simon and I to just pick up and perform. There's not much of a set, and it's a fun show to do.
Do you still perform, Simon?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, yeah, I love performing, but yeah, I don't. When do I? Yeah, we have. I like the booth shows. Actually, I love that because I love playing with voices and the immediacy of it. So we have a couple of simple booth shows that we take out. One is called Twitterwoo, with lots of animals and badgers and different things, and they're knockabout. I like those kind of shows because they're the total opposite to planning a big event. You know, when Storm goes on, Kim gets to design it and lead all the puppeteers, and you know, and I'm behind the scenes working with the production manager and the stage manager and doing the lighting and trying to sort out all the money and everything. And so that's more of a producing role. So I think gradually as the company's evolved, I've done a lot more of that producing and maybe directing if I can, but sometimes the pieces, you know, yeah. Anyway.
So that's just,
yeah.
So, sorry.
I was going to say Twitterwoo is such a fun thing to do. You know, it's
yeah, we love it.
Environmental message. I'm out front and I go back and work puppets, you know, when you need two people behind the set. And sometimes I think it's our most immediately successful show, and it's so nice and simple and old-fashioned. You communicate with the audience straight away. You can see their enjoyment. It's such fun.
It's a classic where you're doing something really complicated and you're building all these massive things, but all you long for is to do something simple.
And at what point you started to deal with environmental projects, and why?
I don't know when our first one was, but I think, you know, when you got kids and you're thinking about the future, it becomes more and more important. And our kids were always very much part of our work, and it took me longer than I would like to admit to think about the materials I was using, but certainly the theme, Embrace, was my first and actually only show in 2000. I started that in 2010 and it was performed in 2014. And I was very affected by the Occupy movement. And I love the fact it wasn't about one thing. It was about everything going wrong, everything that needed attention, people and the environment. And yeah, I needed, at the same time, there was a story that my daughter was given when she was a child about Amrita Devi and the Chipko movement. And she's the original tree hugger. And it was about making a difference and not waiting for other people to do something. But if you feel like something's important, just do it. And yes, so Amrita Devi sadly was beheaded along with 363 people, her whole village. And then in the 1970s, she inspired the Chipko movement in India to hug trees, which is what she was trying to do, save the trees. And they did make a difference. And so that was just one part of Embrace. It was a slow burner, but and a promenade show. And that was my first, yeah.
So you're talking about Embrace. Let's just watch part of the clip so we will know what you are talking about. So that's the kind of works that always makes me want to borrow, I mean, that the creator's brain for some time to figure out how, why, so many things, so many ideas, so many layers of manipulation and playing with lights and shadows and the aerial thing. So,
well, aerial, yeah, I did a few developments. I did a development, I think in 2010, and then this one was in 2012, the film that you see there, that I went to India because we had already established a connection in India that started in 1997. And I took my daughter, who's an aerialist and a Scottish Indian dancer, and I worked the wonderful man at the end, Papan. He was my dance teacher when I first went to India in 1997, and they're fantastic company. And I was particularly interested in playing with shadows and dance. It was, in the end, it became a film that told the story within a promenade show that happened in woods. So, yeah, an interesting kind of development.
Is that it? Am I right?
Yes. Yeah, that's it. Because so what happened was there were lots of different areas you went into. And this one was a particular, these were different issues. So these were tents. It was, as Kim said, the Occupy movement. And in each of these tents, people were discussing different issues. This one was about the bees and the pollinators. And as you can see, there were different issues in different tents. So you walk through this field of tents, listening at each tent to different people's different little short dialogues about what people were saying.
And they had shadow wheels inside that moved, yeah. So the shadows moved.
They were brilliant. They were kind of like a great static installation. I think that for us, we, as Kim said, she got invited to go to India to do dance, to do Bharatanatyam, and we all went as a family. And I didn't have a clue what I was going to do. I was just going to look after the kids, I think. But when we got there, the woman who was in charge of that center, the art center, Malika Sarabhai, she'd been dancing with Peter Brook in his Mahabharata. And she said, oh, now you've come, Simon, you must do a television production for us. So we had to immerse ourselves in Indian stories and Indian folk tales and try to create a television production, as well as Kim doing a dance and the kids were doing dance, which was an amazing experience. And in those days, India still had camels in Ahmedabad. It was still had camels and elephants walking around, and the river was there, and we were there over the whole winter for 6 months, and the melon growers came onto the river and grew melons, and it was amazing. We've never done anything like it. And I think all through and so that is one strand of work. And then we early on in the day, we had been to Charval-Mézières when we were very young, busking. And at that time, I think it was Jacques Felix was in charge of Charval-Mézières, and we met him, and he said, oh, here's some money, go busk your, I don't think he cared what we were doing. We just got some money. We were told to go to one part of the town and do our little show, which we had with little puppets and a drum kit, I think we had. And but one of the shows that we snuck in to see was by an amazing shadow puppeteer.
Jocovita was the company.
Jocovita, well, yeah, well known by now.
Yeah,
yeah.
Kim, you want to jump in, Kim? Or?
Oh well, yeah. We were just wowed by this, and so yeah. Fabrizio, I brought him in 2010 to work with on the shadows, and just a lovely man, brilliant man. So that's all I want to say.
Yeah, but so when you're looking at our work, and a lot of our work now, if you look at the big man walking puppet and even Embrace, actually, you'll see a lot of the shadow work and the Indian influences. We've kind of we're terrible at or great at amalgamating these ideas. So we have had still continue to have influential people who have ideas that we think, wow, that we'd love to try and incorporate that into our work. And so
India,
you see,
yeah,
India is very present in our lives. You know, I think we're always find ourselves drawn to that country, and the fantastic inspiration it's been to what we do. But then also Fabrizio, there's a show we did with a company in Jordan called Little Light, and there we built.
We will get to it.
That is absolutely influenced by that whole the immersion. So our style is to try and immerse people in things, and the immersion of people into the world of shadow was something we long to experiment with, and that's that show.
Yeah, I think with Little Light, what you don't see in the video is that there was a beautiful tent that we made, a hand-painted tent.
Let's talk about Little Light. No. We'll speak about it soon.
Yes.
I'm still stuck at 2012 while you were in India and I visited Edinburgh.
Yes.
And Simon took me around, and there were some experiences that I'm still carrying from that time. One is your beautiful apartment in that old church. Because for us, no, because you know, for Jews, the synagogues are holy places, even when they are neglected. You can't just turn them into a home of someone. So I was amazed by that, and it's beautiful as itself. And also, I got to see the body of dead man walking, which we will see alive in a few minutes. In a warehouse, it was just lying there, and for me to see a dead puppet is always horrible. It doesn't matter if it's small or big. And also, Simon, you told me about two projects. One with a play that happened in a garden, in a public garden, with all kinds of sounds, which I don't think we don't have enough time to speak about it today. And the other one was Giant in the Forest. So I think, and we mentioned the willows, so let's talk about that.
Yes. Well, I should explain, that is me. And it's on a beautiful island called Mull. And in Scotland, on the west coast, we have in the summer horrible little flying insects, and they're called midges. And it was so bad there. They like a black cloud. They're tiny. And when we make these masks, we encourage the community to come and help do the final decoration and, be there when the heads are hanging in the trees. And nobody wanted to come because there were so many midges, and I had to borrow that net that you put over your face.
But so this project, The Giants in the Forest, it follows on from Kim's Embrace show. So she was the inspiration really for starting into looking at environment, but also we love community. So there's a feeling of we want to create things that are placed in the landscape and then have stories told about them. So if you go it's probably the same in Israel, but in Scotland, every hill, every river, every stream, every loch, every glen has a story that's told about it. It has a name. Everything's named. And that's because we like to place names to our landscape. And we realized that what we want to do is try to create some kind of character, some kind of force in the woods that people would walk by, and then they would have to tell stories about why they were there, what these woods were called. And so that proved to be immensely successful. We would make the willow structures and then invite the community to come and then stick on their own bits. In that picture, you'll see all the kids have been, with their mothers and fathers, have been sticking bits onto that head, and it's all covered with moss, and we played lots of games around as well. And then at the end of the day, we haul them up into the trees, and we call that the awakening day. We haul them up into the trees, and then we leave them there for 6 months. all through the summer, and then came back in the autumn. And with our lights and our soundscapes and the local community, we said, so what are the stories of the giants in the forest? And they would say, well, they're these and this and that and this. So then we would light a pathway around the woods to the giants, and then people would tell stories, and we would take an audience on a trip at night in the dark woods to visit the giants and learn about why they were there. It was a massively successful project. I think we did it we did 35 giants in the forest.
We hung, I think there were 50 heads hanging around Scotland.
Okay, anyway, loads.
So it's not just in one forest.
No, they're all over the place. And in fact, this year, we hung them, when was that? 7 years ago we hung one. There's a place called the Big Bog, or Moynvore, which is over in the west coast of Scotland, very wet and mossy. And they recently phoned us up and said, we want you to come back. The heads are falling to bits. We were thinking they've lasted 7 years. Wow. How did they do that? Anyway, so that's a date at some point to go back when things change.
But they always hang in threes, groups of threes.
Because everything's a conversation.
And does it change? During the year, the heads change because of the
They do.
Yeah. Sometimes they become very bare. Sometimes they become birds' nests.
They grow they grow plants in them, you know, they have bits of briar fence hanging off them.
So I'll just say in Hebrew, למי שמעוניין בפרויקט הזה יש אתר, חפשו Giant in the Forest ותראו שם את כל הפרויקטים שקיימים בכל החורשות ובכל היערות. Giant in the Forest, ככה אני מצאתי את זה, זה קיים שם. Okay, just talking about the website of Giant in the Forest that I visited. And and now let's talk about Big Man, but before we talk about him, let's see him.
Ik is vaak maar scherve klein, on lenne rein vijf ganter dun. Ik is vaak maar gas in trein. O hilje voor, ik is vaak maar scherve klein, on lenne rein vijf ganter dun. Ik is vaak maar gas in trein. Ik is vaak maar scherve klein, on lenne rein vijf ganter dun. Ik is vaak maar gas in trein. O hilje voor, ik is vaak maar scherve klein, on lenne rein vijf ganter dun. Ik is vaak maar gas in trein.
Wow.
So I just want to say that both I was really proud of the fact that both our kids were puppeteers on that, and that was our son singing the song. So we're super proud.
So apologies to the pride parents, because I had to cut the I cut the clip, and you know I don't know the words, so I hope I didn't make something.
It's in Gaelic, so that's.
But what's that was interesting, because you know the big giant puppets that the French do. We kind of we loved that they were an inspiration, but also we thought wouldn't it be amazing to take them to the kind of small town that I grew up in, which is in the Highlands in Nairn. That's really what I want to do. In fact, a lot of the work that we do is about going to very small communities with something that's awesomely big and amazing or interesting, and taking the arts to people who sometimes just look at the television and say, oh, well, that's going on in Edinburgh or Glasgow or London or, you know, Paris or whatever. But this is, no, it's coming to Nairn, or it's coming to Bucky, which is a tiny little fishing village. And it's amazing. People to take over their streets, and there's nothing, that was an incredible feeling. And we also had a lot of opportunities for the people in the community to join in that project. There were people called the Watchers who'd be waiting for the big man, and that's really important. So.
You told me that different communities had different, how should I say, ceremonies or festive activities for this man while he was walking. Do tell.
Yeah. So for instance, in the on the island of which island?
Bute.
Oh, no, Rossi. Yeah, Rossi Island. So yeah, Bute, Isle of Bute. So they had a whole lantern display. So there's a very good legend about the swan, and the swan took a message out. And in this case, they sort of altered it a bit. So they had a big lantern, floating lantern, where they floated all these swans out into the water to take the message to the big man. And all the children made banners to wave and welcome him as he came in, which they laid out and wove from the hillside. In Scotland, we have a lot of people who left the country to go to America and to Australia, and they used to stand on the hills and wave at their families as they sailed away off to a new land. And so we kind of had that moment captured on Rossi. And in Bucky, that's a fishing community, and so they put on their fishing gear, and they invented this story that they'd been the Watchers waiting for the big man to appear for 1,000 years, like a secret society, and they kept this alive, and they were going to retell his story to people as he arrived back. And we had comic books that were done in Fife, and workshops to make banners for the streets. It was endless.
The question we asked the community is if the big man was coming back to your community, what would you like? How would you like to welcome him? And what would you like to say about your community? So we had tea dances and music and pipe bands, of course, and all sorts.
And I think there was one village or town that while he passed, the women came out with cakes.
Yeah,
they did. That was the tea dance, and they put on old. We had to stop the music, and they played an old gramophone record and danced around on the streets for him. It was great.
So how's it organized? I mean, it's like the way to engage the community, a whole community. Or large numbers of people.
It took months. It took months, but we had two people who worked and did workshops in each town or village to help the community prepare whatever it was they wanted to do for his arrival.
It starts off with meetings. We months before we arrive. In fact, we just done this with Storm, so it's a similar sort of thing. So months before it's going to happen, we go to the community and we meet the local community leaders. They can be anybody from somebody who runs a community center to a church group to the Scouts or a children's group or schools, and we say, this is going to happen. Really, what would you like to do around this? It's your opportunity to be seen, to be noticed, to say something about where you live, and to make it important for everybody who's going to be watching this. And in the Big Man Walking, for instance, there was no Facebook when we did that. So we had to set up our own, so there was technology involved. We set up our own social media website so that people could share their images and photos. At that point, we had to sort of piggyback on a broadcast site called Ning. So we had our own web social media site. And people posted thousands of posts and shared photographs, as you can see. And nowadays, I think with Storm, for instance, we live streamed Storm's walk in Glasgow. I know this is a bit of a segue, but 1,000 people watched that, and then 29,000 people watched that by the next day. So that kind of the way words spread out, and saying to people, say something about your community, because thousands of people are going to want to watch it, and it's very positive. It's very positive engagement. It's really about how we pull together and join together to do things. And then and with Big Man, that was just about what was important about you. With Storm, we changed that to be, how would you like to see your, change the world and your community today? What would you like to say to people about how you're thinking about the environment and about issues around climate change?
The environmental thing.
Yeah.
It's just something that goes through many of your projects, the connection between us and the environment, the planet.
Yeah.
But it's about community as well. I think that's, the two go hand in hand. You can't, if we look at the world, we can't change it when we just look at ourselves and say, what can we do? Well, I mean, I feel like that. But if we join together and we look at the people around us and we try to make small changes around us, then gradually those small changes become bigger changes and we change things. I hope that's what we try and do with our art. That's what we're trying to do. And then we do fun stuff as well. But, yeah.
So it's only natural that from Big Man we will talk about Storm, but no. Let's talk about Drift. Which for me is such, looking at all the different projects, and this is an installation. Looks totally different than the rest of the stuff, and also the story about a woman. I read about her when she was 58. She was drifted in a boat from Scotland until the boat stopped at the shore of Norway. Right?
Yes.
I got to try it. And also she was like a knitter. She was knitting. And she had this way of living, which I never heard of. This kind of...
it's Shetland.
Yeah.
Crafting.
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't easy. It took me a few clicks to find the right thing. But let's talk about the installation.
Yeah, there were 6 designers on that. So it happened on a beach. So it was always set up on beaches, and it was a co-production with Stamsund in Norway. And again, it took quite a development. We started off developing it as a theatre show and then changed our minds. We created 9 different stations because she drifted out to sea for 9 days. And she had a tiny bit of milk and a couple of biscuits. And we wondered what could have kept her alive for those 9 days. So we had 6 designers who took different days of the week and interpreted it in their own way. So we had a fantastic designer, Ian Halkett, who lives in Norway now, and he loves crocheting. He crocheted a sail that showed Scotland to Norway and the route, and her religion we reckoned was really important. This is an upturned boat designed by a theatre designer, Alice Gooden. It was a big one. That was the only one she did. I did stained glass windows, like church windows, with the overlaying of the old religion and the new. This is the sail. And also her father was he was a shoemaker, and he died out at sea. He earned extra money whaling, and she was 6 years old when he died. So I carved her in a cradle boat, holding on to her father, who's hanging upside down, harpooning a whale. And you went through these installations. Sometimes you're just walking along the beach. We love taking theatre to people who taking it to the people. So especially for people who don't go to theaters, and the people just walking along the beach and they'd see this and go, what's this? And say, well, it's a show. And they put the headphones on, and we'd commissioned Eddie Maguire, a composer, to write a song for each day of the week. And this wonderful actress, Gerda Stevenson, who became Betty Mowat and told the story. And so each day of the week had a song, and you made your own way through the installations until you ended up in a museum, learning about her story and really getting inside her heads. We've done a few headphone shows in the past.
What I like about the headphone show is that you're able to, the headphones put you into the mind of the person you're hearing about, and then you're free to pick up things and explore, like all in the boat, all the drawers opened, and in the bits, and all the installations had sort of bits and pieces you could explore. So so you were free to list, to be in the head of Betty Mowat, drifting for 9 days, alone, slowly becoming more delirious, so that the ideas and the context become slightly more sort of fantastical. But at the same time, you're on this beach on the very edge of the sea and the land, as she was floating above on that level of the sea, between the sky and the bottom of the sea, not knowing whether you're alive or dead. Anyway, but you're able to get into that place and explore the world around you, and it's set at a pace that gradually you separate yourself from everybody else on this beach, everybody else around you, and the things take on life. So people say to us, why is it, you're puppeteers? What are you doing playing with headphones and things? And we go, well, puppets are just blocks of wood that are carved, or bits of foam that are manipulated. What we're doing is, you can manipulate these things. You can imagine the life in them. If you're in Betty Mowat's ship and you find a bit of shell with half a word written on it, what do you think as you're listening to a song about drifting at sea? Because that thing is imbued with a life and a meaning, which is the same as a puppet. So it's kind of playing with that idea of, again, the placement of, as you walk through a landscape in the giants in the forest, and the trees have life and the things have meaning. This was playing with objects that we placed in people's way.
But you're trying to make the audience think.
Yeah, I know. Dangerous.
Not so common. So while you were working together at the company, you also cooperated with other groups and other theaters. Mm-hmm. And one of the hello messages we got from the Zip-It company.
Oh, Gloria.
That first performed at our festival with Monsters.
Oh.
And that, I think it was 2013. So it was like a few months after I met you, and when they said the name, I said, oh yeah, right, sure. I'm going to invite them to the festival. And they were a huge success with Monsters, and later on with Jay, the sailor. So I prepared the video behind the scene where we can see Simon posing as a director. Yeah. I'm pushing and nothing happens.
pleased that the show's gone well, and to see Gloria and Paulette and Ivo do a fantastic job here at the festival, the Toad Festival, and it's a great pleasure to be here and be part of the whole thing.
They're so sweet.
Yeah. And you're like sort of like kind of an octopus that on one hand you're working together as a team, which is, I think the team is not just the two of you, and it's also there's kind of a theatrical community around that, and then you are spread all over the world actually.
Yeah, but probably only to the people who know us and love us. Not that spread out. Like I think Gloria turned up on our door at some point, didn't she? Looking to have some. She worked on something with us anyway. But when she she was one of these people you meet who is inspired by puppetry, and it was a great pleasure to. I always love people who are enthusiastic about what they do, and who have so much to give, and who are eager to learn more. And you know they're going to quickly outgrow you, but it's great to help them on their way. But yeah, it was fun working on that show.
Yeah, I think one of the things I liked as an artistic director, but also as a puppeteer, that they are really into manipulation.
Yeah.
I mean, noble ideas is great, and visual theater is great, and blah 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 is great, but a puppet needs to be manipulated, and if not, for me, it's not puppetry. And they have this thing, the essence. So this is what I liked. I have so many things to show, but I will let you choose. What would you want to talk about? Do you want to talk about Storm now? No, let's talk about let's talk about dragons. Let's talk about dragons, because you mentioned technology, and it's also something that comes and goes in your project. So what is Dragon about?
Well, should I just say why we decided to go into augmented reality, which is what Dragons uses? We did 3 Dragons shows in the woods, and we did Quest for Oz, and they all used augmented reality. And one of the reasons we did this was because all the time you go to the theater and people say, turn off your phone, and people are annoying and they use their phone. And we thought, okay, so if they didn't have to turn off their phone, what can we do? And this is what we did. So, but we didn't. So the idea was you downloaded an app, you came to the woods, and the figures that you saw in the app. So here you see a real person taking a picture of herself with the image that you see on the app, and you see the tag behind her. I hope that makes sense.
That's triggered that.
So there's a reason why you're using your phone, whether it's to collect gold bricks as in Quest for Oz, or to collect in Dragons, there were
magical creatures,
fairies and all sorts of different things. And there was a goal at the end to find as many as possible, as well as going through the woods and interacting with performers and installations and things like that.
Yeah, we had it was an interesting journey. So when we did the Dragons, we had dragon scarers. So dragons are very big creatures and human beings are very small, so they don't often pay attention to them. So we did a fantastic project. Our new workshops are in quite a poor area of East Lothian, and so we went to we wanted to try and embed it's a new workshop for us. There's a new space that we're building in, and we wanted to get people to know about what we do and what we're making. So we did a tour around the schools doing these dragon scarers, which we then put up in and around the events to keep away the dragons in case they actually landed on top of our big workshop. That's what that workshop was. But I think with the augmented reality, it's kind of interesting that a lot of the language used in building these creatures for AR is a puppetry term, so that you get rigging and puppets, and you pull strings and you manipulate. And so, yeah, I found there's a huge crossover between the two. And then again, you use them like characters in a show. You place them in around the show to give people parts of the story or to tell a little bit. So, for instance, the fairies that were in the dragon shows, they would be about collecting the magic that's going to help release the dragon. And when we got to Quest for Oz, we had the three main characters from Oz. That's the Tin Man, the Lion, and the Scarecrow. Were helping people collect gold bricks to help the wizard rebuild the road.
We always have a story, so that's important, because I think sometimes you go, outdoor shows here are very, very popular, in particularly winter outdoor shows, and they tend to be light shows, and they're not necessarily story based, and ours are very much they come from the theatre based story. The story is important, so there's a reason why you have the augmented reality.
Yeah.
So now the time has come to speak about Storm.
Yeah.
But before that, I must know, what happened with Big Man Walking? Did he become spare parts for Storm?
His insides did. Yeah. So we have his shell. And we actually did a festival last year in our space at the Big Shed, Dromore, and we were able to put him together as a sculpture with moving eyes. But yeah, sadly, he will not walk again because his internal structure has been adapted to become 2 meters bigger. Big Man was 8 meters and Storm is 10 meters. And yeah, we played around. Yeah, he's been adapted. He's been adapted, I'm afraid. Yes.
So let's see Storm. Let's see the wonderful BBC report about Storm. And again, I'm pressing and nothing happens.
If you went down to the Clyde this weekend, you were sure for a big surprise. A giant one, in fact. Underneath this tarpaulin is the largest puppet ever to be seen in Scotland. Her name is Storm, and getting her up on her feet is quite the operation. Wow, she's up and she is spectacular. Although I must say, at 10 metres high, she's quite menacing. Kim Bרגsgel is responsible for designing the puppet. Kim, how much work has gone into getting this puppet up and on her feet?
Loads of work. The whole project is 2 years in the making. The structure was made first, and then I designed her and willowed her.
And tell me about the message.
It's to raise awareness of the environment, climate change, saying, okay, what are you going to do about this mess?
Do you think she brings hope with her then in her message?
I mean, we can't all be about despair. We've got to give people something to dream of. The oceans have been like a huge protecting place for us. It's absorbed tons of heat and they've taken all this acid and carbon dioxide out, but we haven't noticed it. And suddenly Storm comes out and says, notice it.
It's fitting that Storm is visiting Glasgow because just days ago plans were announced to make this city carbon neutral in 10 years. But what will Glaswegians think of her towering presence?
I think a lot of people have probably got a shock today, kind of peeking out for their work and buses and things like that. I think it's taken a lot of people by surprise.
I love that she's about climate change. I love that she's made of recycled goods. And I just think she's beautiful.
She's a bit miserable looking.
She's Glaswegian. What do you think of Storm?
Great.
Oh, 2 thumbs up.
Was she scary at first? She's really impressive. I think she's got a really important message to send to everybody. I think we've got to listen to her, don't we?
And what do you think that message is?
I think that message...
Stop plastic going in the sea.
Oh, got it in one. Well done. To get Storm to walk requires the skill of 10 puppeteers.
So inside the body there's a mechanism with lots of wheels, and the ropes turn around the wheels, which makes it a lot easier to pull the legs, so it helps counterbalance the weight.
The biggest thing is working as a team, and we have to all move as one, moving with her, which is quite a challenge.
I like how the eyebrows just like her eyes shut and open, and then they can just move, and so can her head.
I think it's amazing. I'm guessing it's to remind us that if we keep filling up the ocean with junk, then we're not going to have much of an ocean left. And that might mean not much of a life.
I think something like these big spectacle events, they bring people together and focus them and excite them about a giant 10-meter high puppet. But at the same time, we can just say a little message with that and try and make that little bit of change.
As well as myself not being an environmentalist, but I should be one as well, but that goes for everyone. Everybody should be looking after the planet.
You are one now, there's
I am one, I'm
telling
like,
you.
yeah, I know, no.
There you go. What's amazing about that, when every time I watch it, I think it's incredible. We really got the message across. And you know, you never know when you do things like that. You hope, but it seemed to really work.
Yeah,
because totally picked up on it.
Especially since that one didn't have the community build up. That the community build up and visiting the small towns and villages was going to happen this summer, and obviously didn't. So that was her first outing, and we were amazed that the message got across just from her walking down the street, actually. But they're lovely. The Big Man and Storm are such lovely projects to do because they are a big group and everybody has to work as a team, and it's such a bonding event. It's very, very special.
Where do you find the puppeteers?
Apart from my children. Let me see. The first team, a lot of physical theatre performers, dancers. Now we have a connection with aerialists. This time for Storm, we had aerialist supply. We've got a Spanish puppeteer, Sonia, who was on this, who lives in Glasgow. Yeah, you have to be strong. You have to be strong to do it. And you have to be able to work your body with the puppet and work in synchronicity with other people. So, yeah, I don't know. Where do we?
We were also asked people to look at their local communities. I mean, everything's changed. I mean, we're gutted that we're not doing Storm. I mean, that is honestly the truth, that this bloody COVID thing has totally knocked us for six. But we will, if we can come back to it, we will ask the different communities to send us some people who they think would be puppeteers, and we're going to train quite a large team, actually more than 10 people, and we're going to pick and choose that Kim, that's her job, will be picking and choosing the different people to work who are going to work together, so that we're going to try and spread that excitement of being part of that team into the different communities we're going to visit. So we've still got, straight after Glasgow, that happened in January. That was a huge success. I don't think our telephone stopped ringing with people who wanted us to come and do the show, which was amazing. And then, of course, 2 months later, everything was cancelled. So, but a lot of the people who booked have come back to us and said they would like us to see it again. So we're hoping that 2021, touch wood, God willing, will see us taking our puppet across Scotland again with this community of puppeteers, and all the messages are still relevant, they're still there, they're still important. Nothing's changed in that front. But maybe now that we've seen how people can change things with COVID, maybe they can do something about the climate next.
Can they change?
I don't know, we'll see.
I think COVID changed us. It's not that we caught humanity unprepared.
Yeah, but maybe showed us that we can work together. Let's be positive. Come on.
Oh yeah, we are talking. I think it made the world even smaller, I think.
Yeah.
So the last thing we are going to talk about is the work you did in Jordan with our neighbor that we actually know nothing about. It's a Little Light show.
Can I just say my niece lives in Israel, and we were in Jordan, and my niece and I were in communication as though we could see each other across. Hello.
I think she's watching tonight.
Is she, Ilana?
Ilana, yeah. Well, yeah. I sent her an email and a text message to remind her.
Lovely.
So she re-registered. So how did this project found you?
Jordan, the Higher Cultural Theatre came to Scotland looking for somebody to help them develop puppetry. And I went over there to work on a plan to which didn't exactly come about, but started the sort of the chat. And then Simon and I came over and worked with their team to develop a show, and Little Light came out of that development. And then we made it in Scotland, and they sent over their puppeteers to perform it in Scotland. They were absolutely freezing. They were so cold.
Oh yeah, tell me about it. Tell me about it.
Yes. That was great. So they'd never had a puppetry department in the Higher Cultural Centre, but they wanted to encourage puppetry, and we met some amazing people who came and worked with us, and during the development we had a fantastic time in Jordan. I think it's one of the most friendliest places I've ever been to, actually. Very friendly and wonderful, and what was great was that there were parameters to the show that we don't speak any Arabic, and we had to devise a show that would cross language, so that there are very few words in it. I think the only cultural kind of iffy bit of it was that we used a dog in it as our main. We had the dog star, and we had a little dog in it, and dogs are not so popular as cats in Jordan. So that was we chose a cat, but we couldn't find a constellation with a cat in it, so that was a bit awkward. Anyway, but we chose a tent. Going back to the Fabrizio thing, we loved the idea of working with shadows, and we wanted to find something that was simple to do, but very, very effective. And it was great, and the puppeteers were incredible performers, and we trained them to work the puppets.
So they never worked with puppets before?
No. A little bit. When I'd been over, they were doing a puppet show, and so I worked with them on the puppetry in that puppet show. And the two main performers, so I'd met them before, but fairly new to puppetry. So it was interesting, and we just had 60 people maximum, absolute maximum in this tent, and the shadows happened all around you, you know.
Yeah, we built this kind of a shadow wheel, so that it was a little light, and that's where Fabrizio came in, because he is a master of lighting, simple lighting that gives you incredible shadows. So we used a couple of his ideas that he'd given us and adapted them to make these kind of wheels.
Fabrizio, you mean, let's give us the full name.
Montecchi.
Fabrizio Montecchi. We will Google him, right?
Yeah,
he's Giacovita.
Okay.
He is Mr. Giacovita.
So he didn't work on Little Light, but because we'd worked on him with him before, it was very useful for developing this show.
Yeah. I think he inspired us to, and we love shadows. Actually, we still love them, and we will put them into anything we can get hold of.
So let's watch the clip version 2. Luckily, I got three versions. So the longer one wait to the 10 minutes waiting, and this is the version number 2. Again, click.
So yeah, so the story is that there's a dad, and we don't know where his wife is, but he's looking after his son as best he can. And he's an electrician. He goes out every day to work on the pylons that are slowly spreading out across the country, and leaves his son on his own with the lady who comes and look after him. But one day the son brings back a dog as a companion. And the father's absolutely horrified, tries to get rid of the dog, but the dog just won't go away. So it stays with him. And the dog is, and then a little light, a little star falls down from the sky and investigates all these people. And the dog finds the star and this ball, and then the dog rescues. So the dog and the star are kind of quite closely linked. And then the boy has an accident and falls down a well. The dog star rescues him, and the father says, yes, of course the dog can stay, and they all live happily ever after. Yeah.
Of course, as we all. So we are, I think we need to end now. I told you we won't be able to speak just an hour, and I think there's so much more time needed to talk about the rest of your project. But what are your future plans?
Well, I think we're hoping that Stall will come out next year, but we're also looking at trying to create a piece of. We're writing this show called The Fantastic Life of Minnie Rabinski, and that is it's not. Is it a show? It's
no.
It's a thing. It's tricky, isn't it, to describe it?
It's an installation. It's another installation, but again, it has a very strong story about this woman's life. She happens to have dementia, and that's not important. So I don't want people to think, "Oh God, it's a show about dementia," because that people might.
It's a show really about memory, isn't it? And so what we're trying to do is we're working on a way of devising a show in which people can see it in any order. So we're looking at the way a dementia patient visualizes the world, and that world can happen at any time, at any moment. So there's not really any order. Memories come from the past, they come from the present, they can be mixed with fantasy, and everything's uncertain. So when you see the show, you don't make any judgments about the memories that you're seeing. You have to put this life together a bit like a jigsaw puzzle yourself. So that's why it's got this exhibition feel to it. So we're trying to create it like a slice of if you imagine looking through a brain in an MRI scan, and you're seeing the different synapses flashing, it's like hitting a synapse as it flashes with a moment of memory, and this little image comes up of this memory, which is a little film. So we've written some fantastic scripts based about Minnie Rabinski's fantastic life. We've got 13 or 14 scripts. They're very short. They're 1 or 2 minutes.
They're a lot of work, because we're making marionettes and we're making tiny little sets and tiny little details and filming it.
So when the lockdown happened and we initially got lockdown, Kim and I got together and we thought, well, let's create a show from scratch. It's very few times you get that opportunity to do that. We find we're very often chasing funding and putting together ideas based on around what we think will sell or how it will work. But this was our opportunity to work creatively together for a short time. And this is the story we came up with, based on some real life, based on some fiction, but put together to really try and get to tell a story about dementia from the patient's point of view. So it is a fantastic life, because if you have no boundaries to your imagination and you have no remit, you can tell the world is incredible. So that's what we're, so it's happening. We're excited about it. It's a lot of hard work, but we're excited.
Yeah.
I would like to thank you for being here tonight. It was fascinating for me, and I'm sure there will be much more other comments in our Facebook page. I'll just say something about next week's show. בשבוע הבא היו פה הליצניות הרפואיות, היוצרות והמובנויות, אביטל דבורי ושירי גולדשטיין, מתיאטרון הקוקייה שבצפון, ויחד איתם נדבר על ליצנות רפואית בשימוש חפצים, בובות, אביזרים וצעצועים, על השיתוף פעולה או חוסר שיתוף פעולה עם הצוותים הרפואיים, ועל יחסי הגומלין שבין העבודה שלהן במרחב הרפואי לעבודתן על הבמה. אז נשמח אם תהיו איתנו ביום שלישי הבא בשעה 8:30. That's what about next week, which we will deal with medical clowning and medical clowns who use objects and puppets, but well, you are mostly welcome. It will be full of Hebrew.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for having us.
Yeah,
it's been
a
really
pleasure.
lovely.
Great fun.
Yeah. So you don't have to disconnect. I will just put the closure. Don't disconnect. And again, I'm sure.